G'day and welcome to The Outer Side. I'm Tony, and in this episode I'm joined by Boe Langford from Outback Cleanups. Boe has dedicated the last 5 years of his life to picking up rubbish and cleaning up remote areas of Australia. Boe, welcome to the show, mate.
Thanks for having me, Tony. And this here?
Oh, and this is Bloke. We need to introduce Bloke because I feel like he's going to be in the show extensively. If you're listening on audio, we've got a Kelpie, so you'll be used to that because we've always got dogs on the show. Boe, we are sitting here actually in Eastern Creek at the Dragway after the four-wheel drive show. So you're pretty, I guess, well known in the four-wheel drive industry through the work that you do with Outback Cleanups. How did all of that start for you? How did you get into Outback Cleanups? How did it all begin?
Great question. I started Outback Cleanups in January 2019, and basically it came from a long distance passion of having a connection to the country. As we briefly discussed, I was born on country on the East Coast. My parents are opal miners out in Minterby, so the Outback was always a big part of my blood. Red dust up the nose since I can remember. And out there, Minterby has been shut down now. It's gone back to the Unangu, Yunkinjara, Pitjantjatjara people, Unangu, Pitjantjatjara, Yunkinjara people, APY lands. And the place is left in a state. After living out there, I could see from such a young age that there was a massive pollution problem kicking around, and all through the Outback. And then only as rubbish has become more relevant in our lives, more things get wrapped in plastic, the pollution problem has got worse, and obviously population's expanding. It's now so much more accessible for people to go bush, and they take rubbish with them. Unfortunately, they don't always take it out. And I just saw a big problem with it and thought, well, I need to do something about this. I had a couple of injuries at work, was a chippy by trade, and got made redundant through there due to injury. And I was 23 at the time, so real young. And I thought, well, I got my whole life ahead of me. I'm going to do something for society and do something to keep me busy. And I got ADHD, and I can't sit still, and I always got to move and do something. And having work injuries, bad back, and a face full of metal, it's kind of like being a V8 running on 2 cylinders kind of thing. You know what I mean? You're a bit restricted. But there's no way I could just sit on the couch and whinge about my problems. So I thought I'd found the charity, and the amount of support from the four-wheel drive industry, it just encouraged me to get it going. Obviously I wasn't the only person that saw this was a problem and saw that this industry needed something, and not just this industry, but the whole country needed something. But growing up, being in the bush, we had old HR Holdens, and Mum had XY Falcons and 351s in them, and Dad had HT Prems, and I'm a car fanatic, and obviously I can't afford one of those kind of things.
They're out of all of our range.
Exactly. But I wanted to do something. I wanted to drive. I wanted to be on the road. I wanted to experience, meet new people, and the charity just sort of fitted with everything that I wanted to do in life. I was lucky enough to have income protection. I did lose it building that trailer online, but it sort of gave me the wind beneath my wings to get the ball rolling.
So building that demonstrated that you still had a level of capability.
I built one trailer in a year, and
you didn't end up on a current affair or something, did you? Like a Tracy Grimshaw expose?
No, it would have been great though. Imagine the publicity.
By the way, I also run a charity.
Exactly. And the trailer is for charity, particularly. It's owned by the charity. That's really how it got going. I fanged over to WA, met Ronnie Dale. Some of you would know him in the industry. He was super supportive. He was kind of the first well-known name to support the charity and get behind it. Shared it on his story. We started getting some sponsors through there, and the rest is history now. We work with about 40 companies across the nation, international companies and Australian companies.
Amazing.
We've been able to remove over 17 million pieces of rubbish in the last 5 years. So
that's crazy, dude. And look, there's so much to talk about here, but just a couple of the things you just said then that really stood out to me. So you saw, I guess, the aftermath of that opal mining industry and the effect that had had on the land that you'd grown up on.
Yeah,
right?
correct. Yeah.
And anyone who's spent any amount of time in the bush, state forests, national parks, whatever, on the beaches, on the water, on the rivers, would have seen the rubbish and the destruction that human impact has caused, particularly in Australia, on beautiful natural environments, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
You cannot, if you don't see it, you're either blind or you've got your head up your ass. And I know that's probably a brutal way of saying it, but honestly, it's so apparent. And so many people talk about it. but so few actually do anything about it.
Yeah.
And for you to go, I'm not cool with this, and I'm gonna dedicate my entire existence, really.
Yeah, pretty well.
This is what you get out of bed and you do every day.
100%.
Right? It's so
7 days a week.
admirable, dude. And I mean, I am not at all surprised that you've got so much support in this community, in the industry, and that you've got companies willing to back you, because what you're doing is amazing, man. It's so unique. And I guess the question is, like, why? Why are you doing it?
Someone's got to, right? I mean, it's a job no one wants to do. And like you were just saying, like so many people talk about it, talk is cheap, taking action is really expensive.
In this industry, there's too much talk about it. People go on about, oh, don't leave rubbish and track closures, but they're not doing anything. They're just saying stuff that's hollow words on the internet, right?
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, I'm by far not a pretty face, and, you know, I might not be the most...
Neither, that's why we're doing audio, you know, face for radio. Bro.
Exactly. There's no way, you know, I could sort of... Not that I was ever after growing a following, but with the charity, it is necessary to, you know, deliver an audience number and results for sponsors and that kind of thing.
Well, that's how you get your funding, right?
Exactly. Which, again, you know, we certainly could definitely boost our funding a lot, and that would make amazing results. Blokey, down.
I feel like
back up.
He's about to start humping my foot.
He's never humped. He humped.
Well,
touch
there's a
wood.
first for everything.
Yeah, it must smell good, Tony.
You can smell my little Jack Russell, and he's like, yeah, I'd get around that. That's all right.
Good boy. He's only 18 months. So.
But that's the thing, right? You absolutely need to have a following, because that's what will drive your funding.
Yeah, and that's what encourages sponsors. And they're like, at the end of the day, they are corporations and they want to see results for their investment. And sending them, you know, I've removed such and such million pieces of rubbish using your product is one thing, but when they can actually get, you know, a reimburse for there and say this many people have gone and bought your product because you're encouraging a good thing, really does drive it home and allows it to continue. So
yeah, you see, that's an interesting one. Obviously I work in marketing, right?
Yeah.
And so much of what we do is, well, it's really interesting when an accountant or a finance person asks me to demonstrate ROI on a particular activity, and I'm like, you can't.
Yeah.
And they go, what do you mean? It's like, well, marketing, we operate in a grey area.
Yeah.
You know, where it's brand exposure. How many more did you sell? I'm not really sure. But for what you're doing, I think the association of a brand showing support to you, in my opinion as a marketer, it shouldn't be about selling product. It should be about supporting someone that's doing a good thing for the industry and the community.
Yeah.
And if by doing what you're doing, you shine more light on it and you get more people involved, and by virtue of that work, more tracks and more places stay open, well, that supports the industry and that's going to sell more products. So I think, you know, there's a few steps to it, but as a marketer, we've got to be a little bit more abstract in our thinking and not just go, well, I'm going to give you 10 grand and you need to tell me how many more I'm going to sell, because that's just, that's old school sort of mentality, you know? Yeah,
and like, you know, at the end of the day, if these tracks keep getting polluted, then our beaches keep getting polluted, and you know, we are seeing it heaps in New South Wales particularly. Like, we travel all over Australia. It's in our constitution to clean up every state and territory. But if these tracks keep getting shut, there's not going to be an industry to sell these products. You know what I mean? There's no point in having off-road suspension and off-road tyres, and
if you can't drive off-road.
If you can't drive off-road, exactly. And the way, you know, certain people, you know, want to create permits and you got to submit to try and drive off-road, and to me, that's not okay. Everyone should have access to the bush.
It's not the answer.
No, that's an Australian right, is to go and have access to the bush. But as bush users, we have a social responsibility to look after it.
Agreed.
You know, and we can offer a service, a non-profit service. Like, we're all volunteers. I don't take a wage for all the money I raise and all the work I do. But I do want to be able to put fuel in my car, and I do want to have my car serviced and roadworthy and that kind of thing. And like I've said before, you know, talk is cheap, taking action is expensive. To operate this and run this charity is a minimum of about $150,000 a year.
I believe it.
And there's not a cent that ever gets left over.
Yeah.
And so, you know, it's a lot of work from me to maintain those sponsorship relationships and develop income. And another thing too that I don't want to do is constantly switch sponsorships or advertise a brand that I wouldn't actually personally back myself.
We were just talking about this before we started filming, right?
Exactly. And you know, it's so easy to accept a sponsorship from, say, Rada, but if I know that product's not going to go the extra mile and it's going to break when I'm in the bush, not only is that going to cost the charity a fortune to get the vehicle towed out, so $20,000+ because the product's failed, but it's also going to end up in the bush. Not because I'd dump it, but some other irresponsible bush user, and unfortunately they are out there, will dump it. And I won't name any brands here, but there are those.
I will. Adventure Kings.
Yeah.
The most polluted brand in the bush.
Yeah, yeah.
And I mean,
100%.
I've got nothing against that brand in terms of I don't know anyone in that company, but
And
you
it
just
is.
see it, right?
Unfortunately,
you
it
just
is.
See it in the bush. You see those marquees. You see the swags, broken swag poles. We were on the
Solar panels.
$1,000 track in Tassie last year, right? It's pretty hard to get in there. Like, you need a pretty capable vehicle even to get there. There was a winch on the side of the track, and I'm like, okay, so your winch has failed, but why did you remove it from your vehicle and throw it on the side of the track? Like, I'm assuming you wouldn't have a spare winch, so it's not like you did a winch change on the side of the track.
Cheap, man.
Maybe you
Take
did.
it by two.
but even that, but it's really unfortunate. But that brand is the one that you see dumped in the bush all the time, right?
Exactly. And for that, I got morals. I won't associate myself in any way with that. I do believe they should step up as a corporation, have a bit of corporate and social responsibility, and probably throw some money into.
Well, they make enough, mate. That's a big business.
Yeah, exactly. Just throw a donation to any conservation brand that cleans up tracks, or into national parks, and step up, because they are creating a big problem. And well, I don't want to say that and make anyone feel bad, but it is the truth, and the truth hurts. It's a difficult thing to hear sometimes, and it's not said enough. We live in such a society now, in a day and age, where you've got to be so cautious of what you say, and particularly in marketing, and I know with the social media
of course,
background and that kind of stuff, and it's a difficult one, but it has to be said sometimes.
There are organisations that are acting or portraying themselves as having the best interests of the four-wheel drive community at heart, and they absolutely do not. In fact, they're working against what we actually want, which is access to public land, right?
Yeah.
Lock and key systems, restrictions on vehicle modifications over and above ADRs, restrictions on people's driving records for access to bush. I mean, that's just like...
That's insane.
Why anyone would support that just baffles me. So, speaking of support, you've obviously got some good corporate support.
Yeah.
But has anyone in national parks or any of the government, I guess, organisations that manage the land been in touch with you? Or have you had any dealings with any of them?
We've definitely reached out, and we've had communications with National Park. For me, I'm pretty old school. I like having face-to-face conversations. I like handshake agreements. I like looking people in the eye and seeing who they are, what they are, and getting that. Working with National Parks is a bit tricky because it's all email.
Bureaucrats.
Yep. I'm dyslexic as heck. The last thing I want to do is read emails. They all look the same to me. Instagram's all right, because you've got a nice little pretty profile picture that relates the message to a picture.
And it's bite size, right?
Yeah, exactly. Where you get these lengthy emails, and it is difficult. But we have a really good new committee, which are fantastic. We've got awesome secretaries, we've got awesome chairmen, we've got our great board of committee members and our responsible persons, as well as the rest of the OCA members. And so we're sort of filtering that down. Like, what I'm doing here has never been done in Australian history, as far as a non-profit remote cleanup organisation that quite literally manages beach, bush, marine across the entire nation. Like, it's a big slice of pie.
You've taken on what I would say is not a small task.
No, not by any means. And like, honestly, if I knew how big and how challenging this was going to be as a naive 23-year-old, I probably wouldn't have started it.
I'm glad you didn't. Because, I'm glad you didn't know.
Yeah, exactly. Me too.
Because you're doing a fantastic thing, man. And I think that's like anything, right? I've started heaps of things that I'm like, oh, gee, if I'd known... my car build, right? I was like, if I'd known how much money I was going to spend, I wouldn't have done it. Yeah, but then I wouldn't have a cool car, and I wouldn't have had all the experience, right? So,
exactly. And it takes pressure to make diamonds.
A little bit of naivety can work in our favour, I think.
100%. And, that certainty of the unknown.
So with parks, I understand it's a highly bureaucratic organisation. It's very politically driven, but... Are you lobbying, or not lobbying, but are you trying to engage with parks on a regular basis, or what's your sort of strategy there?
Yes and no. Obviously, like having the dog now down and having a puppy restricts us, so I haven't actually been into a national park for almost over a year actually doing this.
Because of him?
Because Blokey, he's now 18 months old. I got him at 8 weeks, and he's restricted us. He will go in for assistance. I've got PTSD and stuff from work injuries, and he will be my companionship dog. So, but he's SA registered, and I haven't been in SA for nearly 7 months.
So he'll get accredited.
Yeah, exactly. Mind you, he keeps jumping. I've got to get that out of him before he can get across the line.
Kelpie puppy, man, you can't really stop that.
Yeah, exactly. They've got the smarts and the energies.
Hey, we're trying to film here, bloke.
Come on, mate. Anyway, yeah, look, parks, I believe there's a really open gate there.
Yes.
And I really want to work with parks.
That's quite an ironic thing to say, that there's an open gate related to national parks.
Yeah,
they've got a reputation for closing them.
They do, and particularly in New South Wales, like we obviously travel around the whole country, and some things. In SA, we've had really good support from national parks, and a few actual national parks have bought bulk of our ocker sacks. So, which are one of our signature products that we reduce landfill and manufacture, and because they want to go and clean up and send their rangers out to clean up, and we make a really heavy duty product that's going to last a while. So I'm giving myself a free shame.
No, go for it. So the ocker bags are a reusable rubbish bag.
Yeah, 100%.
Right? And they're made from recycled shade cloth?
Yeah, so recycled shade sail offcut. So when I started the charity, and like I've been cleaning up forever, like since I was this big, I've been everywhere I'd go, I always pick up rubbish. It's sort of, I don't know, having, a very alternative mum. Like I was born in Nimbin, very conscious. I went to a Steiner school. We were sort of very conscious with our rubbish and that kind of thing. Having said that, a lot of the students that I went to Steiner school with had the complete opposite outlook on life. And
really?
Yeah, I ended up
consumption, and
I just ended up hanging out with them, because as we started to get our license, getting in 17 and whatnot, and I was always the guy with the boat, and we'd go and camp on these remote beaches, and we'd end up having a group of 17 people on this beach, and 15 of them would leave all their rubbish there, and there'd be 2 of us left to clean all this. And I'm like, you guys know better. You've been brought up this way, and I don't know if it's in that teenage rebelliousness to, go against the grain or whatever it is, but it didn't sit well with me. I've always had morals growing up, and I think it was always so highlighted in front of me. Obviously seeing it out on country and rubbish on country, and the side effects of it. I've seen crabs bloody completely tangled up in braid and had to untangle them. I've seen emus with plastic bags wrapped around their necks and throats. I've seen turtles entangled. I've seen fish with fish hooks, which is pretty inevitable when they do rust out, but you still see it, and it's still there in front of you. And someone that's constantly on the road like myself, and constantly in the bush and marine environments, it's not like my yearly trip. It's my lifestyle and my life. It's 7 days a week, so I see it more than anyone else would. But you don't forget those things. You don't forget those things, and if you can untangle them, the seabirds, with hooks and fishing line caught around, and they're trying to swim off, and they got sinkers on their feet, and they're trying to dive and catch fish, and you've got this constant hazard in their way. And I've been tangled in braid once. I got really tangled in braid down at Innes National Park, actually on the York Peninsula, doing a marine clean-up, and I flat out nearly drowned. Hey, and so I was in the reef pulling braid out of the reef, and it must have been 100-pound braid, big thick stuff. And it got caught around my fin, and then my fin fell off, and the tide was dragging out over the top of the reef, and then that arm and this arm, and then I'm like this with one spare foot free, and I made the mistake of having a dive knife on my ankle at the time.
Couldn't get to it.
Couldn't get to it, so I couldn't cut myself free, and so I ended up...
100-pound braid is not breaking.
You cannot break that.
No, it'll cut your arm off before you break it.
It cut through all my wetsuit. I had small lacerations, nothing serious, but lacerations all around here, and I ended up getting a big breath, knocking my knife out with this foot, and then diving down and getting it. I was
full MacGyver.
And I was by myself. The worst thing was, it was a big mistake, I was by myself. So after that now, I always carry my dive knife on my wrist, and I have one on my leg, one on my wrist. Yeah, exactly, because if you like this, you can still get to it and do something.
That's a really interesting point. So for anyone that doesn't know what we're talking about, we're talking about braided fishing line, right? Which is like a polyethylene, multi-strand fishing line,
it's more like rope, like a string line or something, rather to a monofilament plastic line. So
that's, I'm showing my age again here, but a relatively new advent. I think it was late 80s maybe that the braid started.
Yeah.
But so much technology advancements in relation to plastics and petrochemicals has meant that things don't break down or behave differently to the way they used to.
Correct, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So things like braided fishing line, with mono, if you pull on mono hard enough, within reason, you'll be able to break it. But braid, you get over a certain breaking strain, it's not going to break, right?
It
takes ages to break down.
Less than monofilament, monofilament 600 years plus. Yeah, braid is
600 years for a monofilament line to break down.
Yeah, exactly, in the water. Yeah, it's 200 years for a beer can in the ocean to break down, and about 600 years, and that's in the ocean. So you've got, you know, the abrasiveness of tides and sand and.
And how long does one of us last in the ocean if a body goes in there? Like what, a matter of weeks?
Yeah, probably 100% before sea lice and other stuff.
600 years for a piece of mono.
Yeah, and you imagine, like,
any of you fishermen out there that cut those bits of line off the end of your hook when you're tying a knot, pick it up.
Oh, put it in a bit, and like
just seriously, just pick it up.
100%. And a big thing with plastic too, like when it enters the marine environment, it acts like a magnet towards chemicals like BBT and BHT, and so they'll attract. So say those chemicals get spilled anywhere, they'll float around the ocean surface or under the currents or whatever. And then when plastic enters the marine environment, plastic acts like a magnet. So those chemicals get attracted to the plastic and they cling onto it.
True.
However, they are directly transferable to skin tissue. So if a fish then eats that plastic and consumes it and it goes into the stomach, those chemicals then get transferred to the skin tissue, and then who eats fish? We do as recreational fishermen.
Yep.
More than half the world consumes fish. So we're then ingesting those chemicals and those phthalates, which have massive side effects into particularly the hormonal system in both male and female. And the most affected bits of it from my studies are the reproductive capacity. So, like, for example, my sperm count is 1/3 of my great-grandfather's due to phthalates and all the chemicals in and around our environment. And so what we're doing by cleaning up the bush, cleaning up the oceans, is almost a form of self-defense, because if we keep letting all this pollution go around, it's highly likely that in 4 or 5 generations we won't be able to reproduce.
Yeah, and we're literally going to kill ourselves. Right?
Yeah, exactly. And they do hassle, diesel cars and whatnot. No. I think plastic pollution and chemicals in the environment and us consuming that is going to be a way worse problem in the future.
So I don't know if you know the answer to this, but like the advent of plastics in terms of like consumable plastic packaging, that started in like the 1950s or 60s, I believe. Before that, everything was cardboard and paper, right?
Yeah, so it was an invention with World War II, that was the biggest explosion of the modern development in world history was the Second World War.
Industrialization, aka the rapid acceleration of us destroying natural environments as a species. I guess, like, I think about the 50s, I wasn't alive, but I don't think it was that long ago. Like, in the advent of time,
it was like
look at
70 years ago.
It's not that long ago. And then, I watch a lot of like outdoors YouTube stuff, right? And I watch a lot of the Back to Basics guys.
Stricken
Az, and now Stricken Fran, and like some of the places that they've gone, they're on these remote atolls, who knows where. Yeah. And it's like just plastic bottles as far as the eye can see. And they're these pristine, untouched environments, except for all the stuff that's floated in there, and they're looking at them and it's all like Indonesian labels and stuff. Now, I'm not attacking Indonesia or singling them out, but it just so happens that the currents are taking the
Papua New Guinea, East Timor, or Timor in general, Indonesia.
But like you go back in time, 70 years, not that long really. No. That just didn't happen, right? Like it wasn't there.
Yeah, exactly. It was a completely different, almost a completely different environment globally. And particularly like they're in the northern part of Australia, they're up in the tropics, and recently I was up doing a clean-up at Cape York, and we went up from Weeper and then up to Pennyfather and cleaned the river up there, and we were working with several other organisations, including Cape York Natural Resource Management and the local rangers up there and the traditional owners giving us permission and welcome to country. And some of the things that I found really shocking was the turtles nesting up there. We've got 6 of the 7 saltwater turtle species that nest in Cape York and on those beaches, and the pollution, we were going out there and monitoring them overnight with the red torches and putting in little thermometers with their eggs, so we'd have to find a turtle coming up, and the reason we're doing that is to track the temperature of the sand, because as the climate's slowly getting warmer and warmer, it affects the, how am I trying to say this? It affects the gender, so the gender's determined by the temperature of the sand, like a lot of reptiles.
So what, it's skewing the number of males versus females, or vice versa?
Yeah, so we're now getting a lot more female hatchlings than males, and obviously that's going to have a massive side effect in the future when, old Sheila's looking for, get a root, and there's no blokes floating around the ocean to do the deed, so...
That is phenomenal, right? Like, and these are all the impacts that we just don't think about, right? Like,
no.
People go, global warming, it's 1 degree hotter, it's a bit uncomfortable this summer. It's like, yeah, great, whatever. Like, what about everything else that you don't see? And you know, people like you that are at the coalface, so to speak, and you see that stuff. I mean, the vast majority of the population, myself included, we just don't have visibility on that.
No, exactly. And so that was really eye-opening for me. You know, someone that lives and breathes conservation and also, you know, try and promote outdoor in the full drive industry, that was quite eye-opening for me. And not only that, but we were having to remove fishing line from the turtle, you know, basically from the nest. So they were digging up, and, you know, the poor females are so tired by the time they get off the beach. And back in the day, the beaches were flat, but now they're covered in wheel tracks. So now they've got all these hurdles to get over. So they're absolutely exhausted by the time they get there. And then they're burying, you know, fishing line and bits of ghost net and beer tins in. So with permission from the TOs, we had to go in and, you know, actually remove that without contaminating the nest in any way. But it was really eye-opening for me, and I think Cape York's such a bucket list destination for so many of us as four-wheel drivers and outdoor, you know, outdoor.
It's on mine, mate. I want to go there next year. I've never been there, and I want to get up there because I have a fear that...
You and me, mate?
I have a fear that we won't always be able to access that land.
Track closure, yeah. As that telly track gets more and more hacked up every year, you know, obviously the numbers through are getting bigger and bigger. It's so iconic, and then you've got the monsoon every year that changes the track, so diverse.
And then you've got dickheads shooting holes in the signs at the tip. And like,
what's that about?
Just stupidity that you go, do you want this to get closed?
Yeah.
Like,
I don't get the mindset behind that.
It beggars belief, but yeah, I mean, you're right. It's such an iconic destination, and then the more pressure that we put on it, the more people that go there, and the more publicity it gets, the worse the problems become. It's really hard. I feel like the four-wheel drive community is its own worst enemy.
Yeah, and saying that, you know, we are the problem, but I believe we're also the solution too.
Yes.
Like, four-wheel drivers are passionate about the environment. There's a reason we go out there, right?
Yes.
And there's a reason we want to get away from it. We have super capable vehicles. We can put an extra 50, 100, 200 kilos worth of rubbish in our vehicles.
Won't even notice.
And get it out of there, you know what I mean? How many people set their cars up and throw a bin bag on the back? Why not throw two? Or why not get a couple of locker sacks or whatever bag you got laying around that's reusable, and fill it up when you go up there? You know, if you see number plates on the telly track or bash plates or exhaust, pick them up. Pick them up, preserve it for the future so you can go up there year after year. And I don't get it. I recently speaking with the Department of Agriculture, Fisheries and Forestry in Queensland, and they tell me that the Gulf of Carpentaria is the most polluted salt waterway in the developed world. And that just blew my mind.
You said that to me the other day, and I was just shocked, man. I was speechless.
Yeah.
How?
Like, well, I suppose we've got so much tidal movement from
Currents and
Timor, Papua New Guinea, you know, Indonesia, and it brings it in. And like, for example, we went up and we got 600 kilos worth of rubbish off a 2K stretch in one day, or in about 4 hours actually. The next day, walking the tide line, all this rubbish is just pumping back in. And so it's a constant thing.
It was like you hadn't been there.
Yeah, exactly. So one, you know, clean up from, you know, one of the awesome organisations, say Tangaroa Blue or Sea Shepherd or whatever, once a year just isn't enough to get on top of the problem. I think every single person that uses the bush and goes up there has a social responsibility to go and clean it up and just do their bit, you know.
I would agree.
If we all do 1 or 2 bags, it's not going to be as big of a problem. Obviously, it's going to be a constant, but it's not going to be as big of a problem. And now with the development of, you know, artificial intelligence and such, we have these on our side. We can identify where the net's coming from. We can identify where the bottles are coming from.
Yeah, and ocean current modelling and all that sort of stuff.
Exactly. Right? And we can actually go, well, hold up, hang on, folks. Like, as a country, as Australia, and as, you know, the wealthy nation, we should probably stop giving you aid unless you can actually turn the tap off.
Stop it at the source, right?
Exactly. You know what I mean? Like, there's a saying with, you know, if your bathroom's flooding, you don't reach for the mop, you go and turn the tap off. And that's really what we need to do with plastic pollution around the country. And so I believe, stopping it at source, but also we can use what is currently there too. So unfortunately, like, I went and picked up with a really cool group of kids from Blue Gum Community College from Canberra. They flew up with Infused Travel, and they covered the insurance to get the kids out there and you know, clean up country. And we picked up 1,400 bottles in a couple of hours, like just plastic bottles. And so I took them all down to the recycling joint at Weipa for the Containers for Change scheme. And they wouldn't recycle them because they had overseas writing on them. So I spent the morning taking off every single label and then took them down there.
But how dumb is that, right? Like, oh yeah, it's recycling. Oh, but the label's wrong, so I'm not going to recycle it.
It's still a usable commodity.
It's plastic, man.
Exactly.
Yeah, you can still melt it.
Exactly. And so apparently, this is what the folks at the Weipa joint said, with it's a different style of plastic, so they can't recycle it nonetheless. So unfortunately, all those bottles went to landfill, just despite my reluctance to do it, we had to pay to dump them, and it's like, oh.
But better in the landfill than on the beach.
Oh, completely
right?
agree. Completely agree.
Not that landfill is the solution to anything.
No, it's not. However, yeah, it is better to be in a controlled environment that is monitored, and things against like leachate, or better known as bin juice, which obviously go into the water table and seep down. At least at a landfill, that's monitored.
So that landfill, so those 1,600 bottles, did you say?
Yeah, 1,400.
1,400.
Yep.
1,400 bottles going to landfill. Will they ever break down?
Yeah, eventually. But they break up more than down. Okay. They get smaller and smaller, but they don't actually disappear. So that's the microplastics thing in the ocean, right? So it just gets smaller and smaller, but it'll never actually disappear.
Decompose back into, it's not natural to begin with, right?
Yeah, exactly. So really, I'd like to get on top of that. Again, going back to the Department of Agriculture, Fisheries and Forestries, they've got a few good ideas to make the rubbish usable in some way, like a valuable commodity, because some of these locations are so isolated, you just cannot transport that much rubbish across those roads. The roads
not economically viable, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's a better way to put it. It's not economically viable to get this rubbish and then transport it in and get it recycled, So a lot of it just gets burnt, right? So they make these big piles and they burn it, which arguably is probably a better thing than leaving it on the beach. However, there are better alternatives again than that. Rather than just turning it into a big incineration pit, there's ways to make fuel out of it. Like all plastic comes from crude oil.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like petrochemical stuff, right?
Fossil fuels, yeah, exactly. Which is, probably why we're getting more and more of it as cars become electric and diesel. Big oil still want to make their money, so
yeah. Let's make more plastic.
Exactly. So we're looking at ways that we can turn it into a usable commodity and get your plastic, and we can actually burn it, and then from the burning get a byproduct which can be turned into petrol, diesel, etc., and then you can then use that in those remote communities.
So it's like an extraction process.
Yeah, exactly, and it's way more useful to be able to use it in those communities rather than just getting incinerated. At least incinerate it, get a byproduct from it, and then you can reduce the amount of diesel having to get transported up there. The people can. It's in their best interest to remove more of it because then it's more fuel for the town. Exactly.
And I think that's such an important point there, right? Like, how do you, because when you were describing like the Indonesian situation and talking about stopping it at the source, I feel that, right, like we can do so much in Australia, and then, I'm not going to pick on any particular country, but China. Everything that comes out of China, plastic in plastic in plastic in plastic in plastic. How do you get them to care about it? Well,
education,
but then once the rubbish has been produced, or once that product has been produced, how do you then monetize that to incentivize people not to throw it away, right?
Yeah.
How do you, it's almost like it's recycling, funnily enough. It's not a new concept, but it's like, how do you monetize that? And I know at GME, we've spent the last 5 years trying to remove plastic from our packaging.
Brilliant.
And that was an initiative I started because I don't like plastic, right?
Got you, good thing.
But I just did it because I was like, hey, this is a good thing. But then when we were going through the process, obviously our products are high value and we need to protect them in transit and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But we were finding that we were going to suppliers in China and they're saying, we can use a recyclable or recycled material, but it costs 3 times as much as the first use stuff. And you go, really?
Yeah.
Like, really? And it's how do you become efficient with recycling, and how do you become efficient with completing that life cycle of a material so that it becomes viable.
Yeah.
And now what we did was, okay, cool, well, we can't use the recyclable plastic, so we'll just delete all plastic.
Brilliant.
And that's a decision that we made as a company. And now you've got things like APCO, the Australian Packaging Covenant, and, companies are buying into that and saying, no, we're going to remove plastics. But then I go to Coles and there's a lettuce wrapped in plastic. And I'm like, why is that lettuce in a plastic bag?
Yeah.
Or why is a banana in a plastic bag?
Yeah.
Like a banana has a protective bag from birth.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think a banana's born, but you know what I mean? Like,
I do.
From creation. It seems like there's people like yourself, there's these great organisations doing really good work, and then there's like just dumb corporate decision making going on that's just perpetuating the problem, right?
Yep, exactly. And like, I don't have all the answers, and there's so much I don't know about. Like, the waste facility and the waste industry is so advanced in every way. And, if there's anyone out there that wants to reach out and, educate me a bit more,
amazing,
I'm all ears. And not only myself, but, the corporations and brands we work with. And I think, I really do think education is the key. You know what I mean? I don't think that these countries north of us, or any country around the world, is particularly polluting the environment maliciously. I think
No,
they just have a lack of education.
Ignorance,
And
maybe?
yeah, exactly. But, you know, like a lot of these remote places don't have, you know, access to Netflix to watch Seaspiracy, or can't Google what is the result of
Correct.
this, and they just
They're worried
work
about
with,
putting food on the table, right?
exactly. They just work with what's around them, and they're just trying to, you know, get one day by after the other. And I've even seen islanders, you know, that cook with plastic because they've run out of palm trees and driftwood that's washed up because the population's expanding and
plastic
whatever.
burns, so we use
And
that.
plastic burns so well, so
Far
they're
out.
quite literally cooking on plastic, and they've got cancers on their face, and they're blind at 20 years old, and
Oh,
you know
man.
it's a big problem. And you know I think plastic's here to stay. I think we can all agree plastic.
We can't get away from it, eh?
It's here to stay. But I think that, yeah, you know, if we can encourage anyone to use less of it for packaging and that kind of thing, it's going to have a really
it's the
positive
simple
result.
stuff, right? Like,
Exactly.
it's super simple for our business, like for GME. It made our packaging process through manufacturing easier.
Yeah.
By getting rid of plastic.
Yeah, exactly.
And we didn't have to deal with all this crap.
Yep.
And, you know, reduce costs. And what was really fascinating, right, for me, we made these decisions because I thought it was the right thing to do, right? And I'm not trying to claim fame here, saying, oh, I was at the forefront. I just went, hey, this is unnecessary shit.
Someone's got to start
We
the
started
conversation.
sending out our handheld radios, and we'd gone from like a plastic blister pack to fully cardboard. And you've used these radios yourself,
yeah.
the little TX6160s, right? And I thought, look, we're just going to make this change. We won't say anything to anyone. We're just going to do it because it's the right thing to do.
Yep.
We had so many of our dealers reach out to us via email and thank us and say, so happy to see you remove the plastics from your products. The packaging's great. And I'm like, okay, so there are people here paying attention and that are actually noticing and going, why is this all in plastic?
Yeah.
Right? Like, it doesn't need to be.
Yep, exactly.
And I just think, like, surely there's got to be some responsibility from those big companies, the Coles, the Woolworths, the Aldis, like, that are pumping out, I don't know what they sell in a day, millions of products a day in plastic. Surely there has to be some accountability, right?
100%. And like I'm saying, you know, I don't have the answers, and I don't know the answer to every question. But yeah, I completely agree. And I mean, plastics on food is such a bad thing. I'm very conscious of what goes into my body, having injuries, and you know, I'm
of course, man.
You know, I feel like I'm deteriorating, even though I'm 28 years old. But it's just
You are what you eat, right?
Exactly that. And you know, if you're eating everything wrapped in plastic, all these processed foods and everything, you are going to have consequences, and you know, you are going to
100%.
be crook later on in life, and you might not see the results of this for 10, 20 years, but it'll catch up with you, unfortunately. And you know, I'm pro, like, you know, I'm pro to eat healthy and make sure you know, I love my recreational fishing. I like to know, I don't really buy fish. You know, if I go out to a restaurant or something, I'll usually, you know, I'll probably get a chicken burger or something like that. Something simple or something like that. But yeah, like, it's just the processing, you know, for example, if you open a tin of tuna and look at it under a microscope, the amount of microplastics in it are insane.
Really?
Yeah, and it's not just from the fish
horrifying
itself.
to me, because I've eaten a load of canned tuna in my life.
Oh, so, yeah.
Like, 'cause
So
it's
have I.
convenient and it's cheap, right?
Yeah,
Like,
exactly, and it tastes good. And you get, you know, you get all your, you know, what do you call it?
Omega-3 and all
Omega-3,
that.
that's the one.
And-
I need more of it, as you can
and
tell.
microplastics.
Yeah, with a touch of microplastics sprinkled on top.
Man.
But yeah, look, so what, you know, a way that we can combat this and band together as full drivers, I'm actually banding together to try and get the biggest coastal cleanup in Cape York history next year.
Really?
So I've been walking around at this last Sydney show, just gone this weekend, and collaborating with a heap of YouTubers. I recently caught up with Stricken Az up in Harvey Bay.
Sick, yeah.
They're super keen on board. They've got super, you know,
Mega reach, right?
mega reach, but also they're in the field. They go to these places. They live and breathe these remote locations, particularly on Cape York. They know exactly where those hard to get places are with rubbish and whatnot, and they've got a passion to clean it up. So my plan is to encourage anyone that's travelling up Cape York next year to go pick a bag of rubbish up, tag GME, tag Outback Cleanups.
When's that happening, mate?
Well, I've got a spinal surgery next year, so depending on my rehab, I'd love to go June, July, August, get up there dry season. But yeah, it's sort of dictated by my spinal surgery and my recovery. But that is what I'm aiming for, and I am quite ambitious.
We'll be there, man. I've been talking to a few boys about going on a bit of a family trip up to Cape York next year around that June, July period. So if it happens, mate, we'll be up there and would absolutely get involved with that.
100%. Well, it will happen regardless, whether or not I'm there on a gopher or I'm there in a troopy or something else. If I say I'm going to do something, I will do it. I'm a man of my word, and I think you have to be, really.
Yes.
In a day and age where so many people say so many things, and like we were just talking at the start of the podcast,
Polo.
Yeah, exactly. I don't want to be that person, and obviously I've got a brand that has my name to it, and I represent several other brands. So,
of course, yeah.
Yeah, we will be up there. We've got our awesome border committees. Our biggest hurdle right now is raising the funds to make it doable. So,
what does something like that cost?
Probably a minimum, absolute minimum of $250,000 to go up there for 3 months. We'd like to put a pretty big dent in it. We are now DGR approved by the Federal Department of Environment and Water, which the idea behind that is to get big corporations to basically pitch in. So your Rio Tinto, your BHP, your Telstra.
The biggest polluters, right?
Exactly.
Woolworths, Coles.
Yep, 100%. If anyone from those organisations or companies is listening, by all means, please reach out, and don't wait for me to send you an invoice or whatever. Just flick us the money, and I 100% guarantee you it will be spent in the right place.
Yeah.
Fighter Fork Harry is our treasurer, so he makes sure that all the money goes to the right place.
And he's a bean counter from way back, isn't he? Before
100%.
he became a YouTube sensation.
Background is accounting, yeah.
He was a bean counter.
Yeah, so
I always thought he was a bit weird.
Yeah, I've dragged him back into it.
Yeah.
But, you can understand, if you were in accounting, man, you'd want to get out of there and go to...
I would never get into accounting.
Exactly.
I love you, Harry. You know I love you, Harry.
Yeah, we both do, mate. And I look forward to seeing you at the Adelaide show, mate.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we've got a really good committee. We've got really responsible people that, oversee the funding and that kind of thing. Nothing goes to waste. It's not like I can go and take the money out of the account and go and buy a jet ski and...
Yeah, if you rock up in like an F550, I'm like, Bo, come on, mate.
Yeah.
But, look, I think that's that's where the credibility comes from, and the authenticity with you and your organisation. Like, you're real, man, and you can tell the way you talk, the way that you put yourself out there. No one can question your credibility.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate that.
And look, without getting too, I don't want to cause any havoc here. Hey.
Yeah, come on, man, we're trying to film. Shh. What's a chopper, is it?
No manners, just some little private...
Maybe, if you're flying that helicopter over Eastern Creek...
Some private little rich person.
Well...
Maybe that's Harry from Fighter Fork with all the money he's made from his cookbook.
Yeah,
I'm sure he's probably got it.
Well, one of the things I want to do next year is actually, get a helicopter up there to drop some people in. For example, I want to use Stricken As.
Yeah.
Go and say, here's a Coke can to live out of for the next week.
They will do that.
Oh, and they will, back to basics.
Yeah.
Here's, 20 of those big 1-ton lifting wool bags. Go and fill them up, boys. We'll get you airlifted in. Oh, and by the way, here's a litre of water. Fill them up, and we'll get you airlifted out with all the bags out. What an amazing YouTube series that would be, as well as what an impact that would have on those remote places, not just for ourselves, but for the
people that live there.
Well, the voiceless, so all the wildlife up there, the turtles, the dolphins, the migrating whales that go up there, these ghost nets are massive. Like, we pulled one out, more than one, but particularly one that was, I saw this much, a little bit of rope, right? Walked up, yeah, cool. Doesn't come out. I had the troopy completely bogged up to the axles on purpose to anchor it, doing a triple line pull, just trying to pull this bloody ghost net out, and it must have taken 40 minutes and 3 different resets. We eventually got it, and I dragged it all the way up the beach. It took me 7 hours at 0 PSI to get it off the beach. But we were able to get it, and I'm like, imagine from my experience being tangled in braid as an intelligent human.
Yeah, and, imagine being an animal in that.
Imagine being an animal in that without the limbs and hands and a knife in particular. What a stressful, horrible...
Death.
Yeah.
And it's a death, right? You're not getting out of that.
Yeah, exactly. And we'd like to avoid that, you know what I mean? Like, I love nature. The whole reason I go bush is to enjoy nature. It's not to go and hear some thong slapping 79 trying to get up a track and smashing bar work everywhere. I mean, if that's what blows your hair back, all credit to you. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. We got another one. But for me, I don't want to see people. I'm a bit of an introvert. Like, I do socially burn out.
Please hold. We've got yet another helicopter. Is that the ghetto bird? I think it is. This is how you can tell you're in Western Sydney, right? That's the ghetto bird.
The ghetto?
Yeah.
Explain.
The police helicopter. He's probably chasing a stolen car or...
He's probably chasing the helicopter, actually.
Yeah, maybe it's a stolen helicopter.
Yeah. Well, I was up in Cairns the other day, and there was one on my way back from the Cape, actually, and one bloody smashed into a hotel at the front of the foreshore.
Wasn't that guy drunk?
I haven't actually had time to research
Yeah,
the full
you should
story.
read into that story. It's quite, I mean, I shouldn't say it's amusing. He did die, but like, he worked at a helicopter maintenance facility.
Right.
And it was his farewell, and he got blind and stole a chopper and then crashed it into a hotel and died. And it's like, I feel sorry for you, but there's a bit of Darwinism at play there, right? Like, that is pretty much the definition of playing stupid games and winning stupid prizes, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, regards to the family, terrible loss, but yeah, don't steal choppers if they're not yours. Don't steal anything if it's not yours, actually.
Especially not when you're drunk. Well, not especially not when you're drunk, but like, I mean, we were just talking about this before the podcast, right? Like, alcohol makes people make really dumb decisions. So everything in moderation and no stolen helicopters, and probably wake up the next day.
Too much of a good thing is, you know, is never good. And,
anyway, I've fully derailed the conversation at this point. So I just want to go back to this ghost net. When you said that you described that ghost net that you pulled out of the beach, like, where's that coming from? Is that Australian waters? Is it floated in from overseas? Like, what's the go?
I believe it varies. Touching back on that AI, I believe there's now programs available where they can check out like the weaving and the way that the ghost nets are intertwined, as well as the material they're made out of, and actually track back to see which countries and particularly which fishing companies they are coming from.
Right.
On that one, I used it as a big bundle and dragged it up and put it at the Weipa waste facility. So I don't actually know exactly where that came from, but that technology is now available to be able to track that. The biggest hurdle, again, is funding. You need someone to go up there with this technology and implement that.
Of course.
And generally, you know, well, for example, you need your volunteer workers cover, you need your association's insurance, and you need your public liability, which is on its own for this charity about $250,000. Which is insane, but no one's ever done a beach bush marine nationwide charity. You know, we've got every risk you could ever think of. We've got snake bites, crocodiles,
the insurers
stonefish.
are just looking at it and go, nope.
Yeah, and that's the biggest hurdle is, you know, we've applied to so many different insurance companies and they're like, don't want to touch it, don't want to touch it.
It's risk mitigation for an insurer, right?
Exactly, yeah. And so
how do we take as much money as we can off you without paying you a cent back?
Yep, exactly. And you know, with my background and having injuries at work and having a 5.5-year court case fight with insurance companies, I know how difficult that can be, and there's no way I'll bring a volunteer out without insurance. Not only because if they get injured and they need a $50 million surgery and flights and 10 operations on a foot for something, they deserve that, for example. So I'm not going to bring anyone out until that's covered. But also, it restricts us because I'm the only field operator, because for just me to operate, it's about $10,000 a year in insurance.
Yeah.
If I had 200 people help me, it'd be awesome. But I can't because of the insurance. So that's sort of one of the biggest things. I lost my train of thought on that.
No, that's all right. It's a good segue though, because I'm interested in this. So we were actually talking, and I'm probably not speaking out of school here. We were talking about your organisation yesterday at GME.
Yeah.
And we were talking about how we can assist you. And obviously we can give you money, and that's great, and money's helpful.
Yep.
But we were talking about how we can engage our staff with your organisation.
Yeah.
And about getting staff involved, and whether that be, like, we've been involved in the Fraser Island cleanup for a number of years.
Brilliant.
Where, you know, some of my staff go up there.
Yep.
The timing hasn't worked for me personally, but we'll send some of our staff up there, they get involved in the cleanup and they do it. If we were to do something like that with you, do we need our own public liability insurance? Is it your insurance? Like, because
You'd need your own. Currently, you'd need your own.
Okay, which is fine, because we do. We've got 20 million of public liability, so happy days.
Brilliant.
And I think that's the sort of stuff that we've got to really make quite clear to corporations, that, like, hey, you can do this and you can get involved. And giving you money is one thing, but you're still only one guy.
Yeah.
There's only so much you can physically pick up.
Yeah,
in a year, right?
exactly, yeah. And don't get me wrong, I could definitely do more. Like, God, I must spend hundreds, if not thousands of hours just repairing this vehicle because it's so old and it's so tired. So if I had a new vehicle, I'd obviously be able to spend that hundreds to thousands of hours picking up rubbish rather than sitting on the side of the road doing a wheel bearing or constantly changing a belt, or, you know what I mean?
I don't know, man. Old Toyotas are pretty reliable. So yeah, this one might be like giving you grief, but I tell you what, a lot of new cars wouldn't handle the abuse that this thing's copped, right?
Yeah, true that.
But what did you say? It's got 750,000 Ks on it?
Yeah. Yeah, she's getting a bit long in the tooth, but the biggest thing is power too, like travelling as well. You know, most people can sit in 100 Ks going somewhere in it. I'm a 40 Ks an hour, second gear, hazard lights on. Yeah. Sorry, you have to go around. And that's just the truth of it. It's a 1H shed with never had a spanner put to it besides a couple of inject pumps changed, but they do get long in the tooth and they do wear out, and they're not a powerful engine to begin with.
No.
This thing actually dynoed. We dynoed at Mareeba in 2020 at ADS injection, and they put it on the dyno. It's got 50 horsepower, and we spent $6,000 new injector pump, 6 new injectors. It made 56, so 11% increase, as Mick said.
Far out.
But you
just a tractor, eh?
Yeah, exactly. Like, it is got the whole GVM upgrade kit and stuff on it, but you add this and that, and you're well over 5.5 ton kind of thing.
So I guess for you it's a mixture, right? Obviously you need funding. Your funding is critical, but then also
we're just scraping the barrel as it is, but we need to really pump that up to be able to continue this and put dent in things. Particularly with me stepping down to have a spinal surgery and go recovery, I need to get someone to carry the torch while I get my body fixed.
Yeah, of course, which is critical.
Exactly, which will then mean insuring another person, and they need something safe to operate out of. This has no ABS. This doesn't have airbags. And it's also my baby. I bought this as a 3rd-year apprentice, you know what I mean? There's no way I'm going to throw it the keys to some inexperienced person, say, here's a 2.5 ton trailer, hitch it up the back, go bush.
No, it'll end in tears.
Exactly. So whether or not they're operating it, look, even just a dual cab ute, you know what I mean, that they can go and run back and forwards kind of thing. But unfortunately, due to the demand, they're like $70,000 now for a stock dual cab ute. Throw a few accessories on it, you got a $100,000 car.
I can confirm, we just bought a Ford Ranger Wild Track for GME. It was $76,000. It's at MITS. I dropped it off this morning to get a training canopy on it. It's already over $100,000.
Yep.
It's
that.
Absolutely phenomenal.
Just like
car. And it blows me away, right? I said to my brother-in-law on the weekend, like, you don't get much for $80,000, and he's like, what are you talking about? He's like, every car's $80,000 now. Like, if you want anything half decent.
Isn't that insane?
It's crazy, man.
I remember growing up and I was like, $100,000 car in my head was like a Ferrari,
Yeah, fully. It was like a luxury car.
Yeah,
now
exactly.
Now it's a tradie ute.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I remember seeing a Commodore for like, $34,000 and being like, that'd be nice.
Yeah, big money, huh?
Yeah, exactly. But now, I think I'm $100,000 deep in this thing, man, and it's...
Yeah, and
insane.
Anyone outside of the four-wheel drive community probably would go, what?
Yeah.
But anyone in the four-wheel drive community goes, yeah, easy.
Yeah, exactly. And then the fuel consumption that goes with these things, like, I'm at anywhere between 30 and 40 litres per 100 just due to the lack of power, because you're having to push it so hard to just get the thing rolling, where, something new and more modern, like a new Silverado, they're like 9 litres per 100 around town, and they're like 14 tonne or 3.5 tonne.
They're also like $150,000, aren't they?
Yeah, exactly. Well, with the charity discount, I think we get 126 if I have test driven them.
Interesting though, like a person who shall remain nameless because I don't want to incriminate them. I was chatting to just a couple of days ago about the American trucks, and they're obviously gaining popularity, but reliability is questionable.
Yeah, I've heard that heavily. Been steered away from 2 brands. Chevy's probably, out of the 3 American trucks, Chevy's probably the one that I personally would go for. I'm not a mechanic, I'm not a mechanical engineer, I don't work on the things.
Yep.
But the vehicle seems nice, and it's got the towing capacity, and out of the 3 that have been mentioned, and speaking to people that do work on them at the show and have had them in their workshop, they're like, that's the one you sort of need. But at this point, I don't think there's any real difference in modern vehicles' reliability too much. I don't think they're not the same as these old things, They're not the same as the GQ.
Electronics, man. It's just all the electronics, little solenoids, little sensors, and all that sort of stuff that goes wrong. I mean, driving that Ranger for the last few days, while the show was on, I had the 80 and the GQ here.
Yeah.
So I was driving the Ranger around, and man, just the amount of technology in that thing, like lane departure, and it's telling me to put my hands on the steering wheel, my hands are on the steering wheel, and it's telling me to take a rest because I'm fatigued, and I'm like,
pull those fuses out.
Yeah, I'm like, well, I asked a tuner here on the weekend, how do I turn that off? And he said it's against the law for us to modify that part of the system because it's safety. But I'm like,
who wrote the law?
How are you gonna fix all that? Like, as a car ages, right, things start to break. A GQ or an 80 series or an old Troopy, like, they're reasonably simple. But as we add more and more technology, you're like, are these things just going to become a disposable item?
I think they are. I think they already are.
Like honestly. A Tesla, right? Yeah. I know I've read a lot of stuff about Teslas being uneconomical to replace a battery. So they're basically becoming, not a single use, but they're becoming...
Yeah, it's like an old Kodak camera from the 90s.
Yeah, it's like they're shortening the lifespan of something, as opposed to like an old full drive from the 80s where you just keep pouring diesel into it and it just keeps going. Right?
Yeah, exactly. But again, like if you sell one car to, you know, the family and they keep passing it down generations, they're eventually not going to need to buy cars, you know what I mean? Like if you bought 10 for the family kind of thing, like, so I suppose manufacturers are looking after their long-term
You've
interests.
only got to go out bush to see that, right?
Yeah.
Like the Land Cruisers that have been on the property for 30, 40 years, and you're like, nope, they're still going.
Yeah, they still work. And, you know, I will rebuild this and I'll do it myself. And, you know, I'm confident it's that simple. But look, I think it's a really good opportunity for an automaker manufacturers to get on board and support this charity. Like, it's DGR approved.
Yep.
We've proven ourselves, you know.
Yep.
We've removed more rubbish with our little vehicle and trailer than any other organisation in Australian history that I'm aware of. Correct me
Yes.
if I'm wrong, someone. But we data log everything and I display it on the social medias. And
Yep.
I'm very transparent too. Like, I like people to see exactly where their money's going.
Yeah.
You know, there's so many organisations out there and you donate to them and you never see the results of where your money's going. I tell you what I spend on fuel. I tell you what I spend on dumping. I tell you what things cost. You know, I built the trailer myself. It's about a $70,000 trailer, unfortunately. And, you know, it cost me my income protection, but it's the truth.
And that's a great point, and I will give you a plug here. So if there is anyone involved with any of the auto manufacturers, I know you guys throw cars around like they're going out of fashion. You give them to a whole bunch of different people. If there is one person who's going to test a vehicle to its full capacity and take it to some of the most remote places in Australia and do something really bloody good for the industry, then it's this guy. So someone should come to the party. And you know, I'm sure you're not going to get rid of the Troopy, but maybe if it can come off the road for a little bit of a rebuild and a bit of love while you got something else to drive around in, then I think that'd be fantastic.
Yeah, 100%. And you know, like going back to, like, we want to represent good products that we trust in too. So if we can get a vehicle and put it through its paces and I can say this is all right, you know, a good vehicle, man, the amount of reputation that's going to
So
go.
like a Mahindra.
I don't know if they're any good. Might be good.
I don't know. I don't know anything about them.
I don't know, man. But I like, for example, we work with Yamaha, and the reason I work with them, like, we've been approached by other manufacturers.
Reliable.
They just work. And for such a big corporation, it doesn't feel like a machine to deal with.
Yeah,
like, so,
right.
you know, I have to do obviously a lot of communication for sponsorships and make sure everyone's happy. I can, you know, ring the media director or ring the marketing director and have a conversation, you know, over the phone, and they sort it out. It's not like an email chain. Like, we work with other large corporations in the past, and, you know, they've thrown a bit of money at us, and this is a funny thing, they've thrown money and said they'll throw products, and then, you know, they're messaging me going, you know, where's the content? And I'm like, well, I haven't got the product yet. And because there's so many people in the line of chain, it's a machine. There's not that communication, so the head doesn't always talk to the foot.
Yep.
And
I've worked for some big multinationals, mate, and I can guarantee that's exactly how it goes.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's so good to hear from Yamaha, because they're like a multi-billion-dollar corporation, right? They make pianos and all sorts of random things. But
well, Yamaha Motors particularly what we work with. So, you know, we have the buggies, I've had several Yamaha motorbikes over my life, outboards, generators, that kind of stuff that really uses. I mean, a grand piano might be nice, but I don't think it would help us pick up rubbish.
That'd definitely add to the weight that you're carrying around in.
Yeah, wouldn't it? Be good at the shows though.
It would be, yeah. You could do a little piano concerto for the fans.
A fean musos kicking around.
So, mate, look, this has been absolutely fantastic. This is not going to be the last time I speak to you. I guarantee you that.
Definitely.
I mean, obviously we work with you through GME, but I've really enjoyed sitting here and having a chat with you and hearing more about your story. If people want to find out more about Outback Cleanups, what's the best way for them to find you?
Contact us through social media, Instagram, Outback Cleanups, Facebook, Outback Cleanups Australia. We've got Patreon, as well as just send me an email, boe@outbackcleanups.com. Or secretary@outbackcleanups.com, admin@outbackcleanups.com, and our board can get back to you. Yeah. I am pretty scared at the moment. I've had a big 7 months on the road and I've got another 2 months to go. So if that was a bit loose, I do apologise.
No, man, it's been fantastic. But I just in closing, I was going to mention it before and the conversation was flowing, so I'll let it go. I read on your website a couple of days ago, in preparation for this discussion, you wrote something about we used to get punished as school kids and made to pick up rubbish as a punishment.
Yeah.
And that hit home for me, because I was always, like, being an ADHD kid, I was always in trouble, I was always on detention, and we were always made to pick up rubbish, and it was a punishment.
Yeah.
Do you think that has had an impact on the psyche of people now, where they
100%.
just don't want to pick up rubbish because they think it's a punishment?
100%. I completely agree. It's funny enough, I've had I've had people that, you know, they'll like mates from school that'll follow, you know, the charities it grows through, and they'll be watching a story or something, and their wife will go like, "Who's this naughty boy you follow that's always done, you know, always got to do community service?" And they're like, "No, he don't, it's a charity."
Yeah, he's choosing to do it.
Exactly. Down in SA, we have a thing called Repay SA, and you know, for people that can't afford speeding fines, tickets, or you know,
Oh, like community service.
yeah,
option,
and it's a community service thing. And I'm like, man, I must have a few get out of jail free cards. Like,
Yeah.
so,
If you ever get done for anything, you'd be like, "No, I've already paid this off tenfold."
yeah, exactly. But definitely, like, I think as society, and I think it should be a reward. You know what I mean? Like, you should be right. If you're not good at this particular class, you know, because there are people out there that don't fit into school. Why don't you go clean the school up, and you know, you can have 10 minutes off early. And that'll probably last for a week before the school's immaculate and no one's littering rubbish.
Yeah,
you know
make it a reward rather than a punishment.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Change that psyche, because I'm really glad you addressed on that, because that's something I wanted to address on too.
Man, it just struck me. Hey, when I read it, I was like, holy, like that's one of those like psychological things that subconsciously affect children and will have an impact on the rest of their life that no one ever thinks about, right? But for you to have written that, I was like, I need to bring that up because I think it's so important, and I think, you know, for me, I've got a young daughter and she's going to spend as much time as possible out in the bush, and I'm going to instill in her from day one that if it's not meant to be there, pick it up and put it in the bin bag 100%. On the back of the truck. Like, you're never going to get in trouble from me for picking up rubbish, you know?
Ask your parents for a pair of gloves and a grabber and an knocker sack, and, you know, put it on your Christmas list. And if you go out, I mean, like, growing up, I get frustrated like all young men do and whatnot, and I'd put my anger or frustration into something constructive. So I'd pick up rubbish, or I'd be like, "Mum, I'm going to wash your bloody car again."
Yeah.
And she'd really positively encourage that and reward that, and that changed my entire mindset. I mean, my mum's just an absolute gun. Like,
that's so good.
Shout out to Mum, good on you.
Yeah, good on you, Mum. Shout out to all mums.
Yeah,
we wouldn't 100%. Be here without you.
All mums, all dads, like, you know, you're all legends, and you know, I mean, there's no training for parenthood, is there? So.
Oh, mate, tell me about it. I have no idea what I'm doing on any given day, but it's a good ride anyway.
100%.
Well, Boe, mate, thanks again. I really appreciate you taking the time, man, and yeah, we'll be in touch.
Absolutely, man. Look forward to the next one. Maybe we'll do a podcast after we've done the Cape York cleanup and see the results.
I reckon we could do one from Cape York, a live podcast up there.
That'd be pretty
and for all of you guys out there watching and listening, I just want to thank you. I've been getting some amazing feedback via Instagram and via YouTube, and even at the 4-wheel drive show here at Eastern Creek over the weekend. The number of you that came up and said that you were enjoying the content and that you were learning stuff and that you were really interested in hearing people's stories, it just makes it all worth it. So yeah, I can't thank you enough for the support, and we'll catch you next time on the outer side.
All right.